It's 2:17 in the morning. The floor below you is doing $4.3 million in action right now. Not tonight. Right now. The baccarat tables alone are running $800,000 in active bets. A man in a gray suit at table 9 has lost $340,000 since 11 p.m. and has not moved. Not once. He ordered one drink. He didn't touch it. You are watching all of this from a room that does not appear on any casino floor map. 22 monitors, every angle, every table, every face. Vegas never sleeps. Neither do you. You didn't grow up in this world. That matters. The people who grew up in it never learned to see it clearly because they were always already inside it. You came from outside. That's what made you dangerous. You grew up in Henderson, 20 minutes from the Strip, but a completely different planet. Your father worked maintenance at one of the older casinos on Fremont. You'd pick him up sometimes after school and walk through the floor. The carpet was always the same. Loud, aggressive patterns designed to disorient, designed to make you lose track of time. You were 12 years old, and you already understood that the building itself was trying to do something to you. That stayed with you. You went to UNLV business, not because you loved finance, but because you loved systems, how things worked underneath the surface. You graduated in the middle of your class, which bothered you for about 6 months, and then stopped bothering you entirely. Grades were never the point. Your first job was floor operations at a mid-sized casino on the east end of the Strip. Not a name anyone would recognize. The kind of place where the chandeliers hadn't been cleaned in 3 years, and the high-limit room was just a slightly quieter corner of the main floor with a velvet rope. You managed shifts. You watched dealers. You wrote incident reports. You made $34,000 a year, and you watched everything. You watched how the money moved, where it slowed, where it accelerated. You watched which table configurations produced the highest hold percentages. You watched which floor layouts caused people to walk deeper into the property before they found what they were looking for. You watched which pit bosses were running their sections loose and which ones were running them tight and what the difference was to the bottom line. You were not managing a floor. You were studying a machine. 18 months in, you wrote a 12-page memo to the general manager. Unsolicited. No one asked for it. The memo outlined 4 specific changes to table configuration and 2 changes to traffic flow that you calculated would improve hold by approximately 2.1% annually. For a property doing $180 million in gaming revenue, 2.1% was just under $4 million. The general manager read it in front of you, set it face down on his desk, and told you to get back to your shift. 3 weeks later, 2 of your 4 recommendations were implemented without credit or acknowledgement. You noted that. You did not say anything. You kept watching. The first real opportunity came through a contact you made at an industry conference in 2009. A small gaming license had become available. A downtown property, or not the Strip, nowhere near it, was coming out of bankruptcy. The building was tired. The brand was dead. The equipment was a decade old. Nobody wanted it. You wanted it. You spent 4 months assembling a group, a lawyer you trusted, a former casino CFO who understood the numbers, 2 private investors who understood risk. Your total raise, $11.4 million, for a property that needed at least $8 million in renovations before it could operate competitively. The math was not comfortable. You knew that. You structured it anyway. The Nevada Gaming Control Board process took 7 months. Investigations into everyone in the group, financial history, personal history, associations. You sat across from investigators 3 separate times and answered every question without an attorney present because you knew that bringing an attorney signaled something you didn't want to signal. You had nothing to hide, and you needed them to feel that. The license was approved on a Thursday morning in March. You signed the purchase agreement that afternoon. The first year nearly killed the investment. The renovation ran $2.1 million over budget. A burst pipe in month 3 destroyed 3 weeks of renovation work on the main floor. Your lead contractor walked off the job in month 5 over a payment dispute. You replaced him in 48 hours with someone more expensive and less difficult. You opened 14 months after closing, not on the timeline you promised your investors, on a timeline that kept the property alive. Opening night was not glamorous. 200 people, local crowd, half of them curious, half of them skeptical. The gaming floor was clean but small. 17 table games, 220 slot positions, 1 bar. No VIP room, no hotel component, just the floor. By the end of the first week, you knew which tables were working and which ones weren't. By the end of the first month, you had adjusted the layout twice. By the end of the first quarter, you were slightly ahead of your projections. Slightly. That was everything. The high rollers don't come to you. You go to them. That was the lesson nobody wrote down anywhere. You had to learn it the same way you learned everything else, by watching the people who already knew it and reverse engineering what they did. You identified 8 individuals in your first 2 years who had the profile you were looking for. Not celebrities, not athletes, business people, private wealth, the kind of money that is very large and very quiet, and absolutely will not walk into a casino that isn't treating them correctly. You personally called 4 of them, not through intermediaries. You knew their names, you knew their preferences. One of them played blackjack exclusively and would not sit at a 6-deck shoe under any circumstances. One of them required a private driver from the airport to the property every single time, no exceptions. One of them needed a specific brand of water in the suite that required a special order from a distributor in Arizona. You arranged all of it before the first call ended. The first high roller walked through your door on a Wednesday night in the second year. He lost $180,000 over 3 days. He tipped your staff generously. He called you directly when he wanted to come back. That was the beginning of the real business. By year 4, you were building. The adjacent lot became available. You bought it. The building 2 doors down came onto the market 18 months later. You bought that too. What started as a single-floor gaming operation was becoming a campus, hotel rooms, a restaurant that people drove across the city for, a spa that opened at 6 a.m. because one of your regulars told you the best part of a Vegas trip was an early morning massage before the day started. You listened. The high-limit room was no longer a velvet rope in a corner. It was a separate space, private entrance, different air system. You read a study that suggested slightly cooler air in gaming areas kept players at the table longer. You tested it. The data supported it. The VIP suites were built to a specific specification, not luxury in the way a hotel designer understood luxury. Luxury in the way your best clients understood it, which was mostly about privacy, control, and the complete elimination of friction. A regular door handle was a friction point. A key card was a friction point. Biometric entry on the private suites. If a guest wanted something at 3 a.m., there was one person responsible for that something, and that person was always reachable. You hired the best floor staff in the city, not the most experienced, the best. There is a difference. Experience produces habit. You wanted people who understood what was actually happening in a room. Your director of player development came from a behavioral psychology background, not hospitality, psychology. She understood why people made the decisions they made under pressure. She understood what a player's face looked like when they were about to increase their bet significantly, and she understood what to do with that information in a way that kept them comfortable and in the room. The cameras saw everything. Your surveillance room by year 5 was running 340 feeds simultaneously. Facial recognition on every entrance. Pattern recognition on every table. If someone was playing with a system, card counting, edge sorting, anything, the system flagged it before the pit boss had time to notice. If a player's behavior changed, aggression, distress, anything that suggested they were making decisions from a bad place, your team was trained to intervene quietly, not to protect the player, to protect the house from the kind of liability that follows a bad outcome. Every gambler thinks they can beat the house, but the house is you. The celebrity relationships came gradually and then all at once. You did not court celebrities as a marketing strategy. You were not interested in photographs or press or the kind of attention that follows a famous person through a lobby. You were interested in what a certain type of celebrity brought through the door behind them. One actor became a regular. He brought 3 friends the second visit. One of those friends became a more significant regular than the actor himself. That friend brought a hedge fund manager from New York who had never been to your property before and lost $2.2 million over a weekend, and called his assistant from the car on the way to the airport and booked the same suite for 6 weeks later. That is how the network worked. You were not running a casino. You were running a room where the right people wanted to be. The underground piece was something you understood from year 1 but never touched directly. Vegas had layers that the licensing board knew about, and layers that they preferred to believe didn't exist. You knew where those layers were. You knew exactly which operators worked in them and which of your competitors had arrangements you would never have. You chose not to have them, not from virtue, from calculation. The operators with those arrangements were also the operators the FBI had files on. The files were not always acted on, but they existed, and a file existing changed what you could become. You were playing a much longer game than that. You kept your hands clean in the places where dirty hands made noise. By year 8, your name moved in the city, not in a public way, in the specific way that mattered. When a new property opened, they sent someone to study your floor. When regulators had questions about industry practices, you were one of 4 operators they called. When the major hospitality groups looked at acquisition targets in the market, your property appeared on the list, even though you had never indicated any interest in selling. That is a specific kind of position, the position where the game acknowledges you without being asked. The gross gaming revenue for the year you turned 41 was $380 million. Not a strip number. You were still not technically on the strip, but you were adjacent in every way that mattered. Hotels above your property, an entertainment venue in the new building, a conference facility that hosted 3 industry events per year. The property had become something no single category captured cleanly. The private equity interest started arriving in year 9. 3 separate approaches, valuations ranging from $600 million to $800 million. You took the meetings, you listened, you asked specific questions about their operating philosophy because you knew from watching other operators that PE ownership changed floor culture within 18 months in ways that affected retention, affected the quality of the player experience, affected the relationships you had spent a decade building with your best clients. You passed on all 3. Not because the money wasn't real, it was very real, because you were playing a different game than they were. The dark part of this is not what people expect. People expect the dark part to be the criminal element, the loan sharks operating around the edges of the property. The problem gamblers who you watched lose things they couldn't replace. The staff member who skimmed from a cash cage in year 3 and whose termination you handled quietly to avoid the reporting requirements that would have created a regulatory review. Those things were real. They existed. You dealt with them the way a property of this scale dealt with them, methodically, without drama, with institutional awareness of what each situation required. The actual dark part was quieter. By year 10, you had become something the people in your life did not fully recognize. Your marriage ended in year 7, not dramatically. Gradually, the way things end when one person has slowly been absorbed by a project that lives in a different reality than the one they share with another person. Your ex-wife was not wrong about anything she said. You were simply no longer in the room, even when you were in the room. The relationships that remained were the ones that existed inside the work. Your player development team, your surveillance director, your CFO. A small number of regulars you had known for years, and with whom you had something that resembled friendship, but was structurally more like alliance. The isolation was not painful. That is the most honest thing you can say about it. It was simply the shape of what the work required. You understood that the way you understood the house edge, not as a tragedy, as a condition. Some nights, you walked the floor alone after close. 4 a.m., the cleaners working, every table empty. The lights still up because darkness in a casino floor is something the maintenance schedule never quite arrived at. You walked the floor and you looked at what you had built, and you felt something that was not pride and was not satisfaction. It was closer to recognition. This was the machine. You were not separate from it. You were part of it. That had always been the arrangement. Rivals came and went. A competitor opened 4 blocks away in year 6, with significantly more capital and significantly less patience. They tried to buy 3 of your best floor staff. 2 left. You replaced them in a month. The competitor spent $40 million renovating a property that was operationally mediocre, and they knew it within the first year. They sold to a larger group 18 months later at a loss. You said nothing publicly. You had learned early that public commentary on a competitor was a move that only the insecure made. There is a version of this story where you sell, where you take the money and the years of work and convert it into a number that sits in an account and generates returns while you figure out what comes next. You have run that model more than once at a 6% return on a clean $750 million exit after tax, after structure. You are producing roughly $25 million a year in passive income for the rest of your life. You would never need to make another decision. That model is accurate. It has never been interesting to you because what you built is not primarily an income stream. What you built is a machine that moves money, influences decisions, generates access, and compounds its own position in the market every year it operates. Selling it converts something alive into something inert, into cash. Cash that will be taxed when it arrives and eroded while it waits, and imperfectly deployed into something that is almost certainly less interesting than what you already have. The wealth is in the machine, not in what the machine would fetch. That is the thing about this city that nobody explains correctly from the outside. Las Vegas looks like a place where money is made. It is actually a place where machines are built. The money is a byproduct. The machine is the point. You are standing in the surveillance room at 2:17 in the morning. The man in the gray suit at table 9 just increased his bet, $40,000 on a single hand. He does not know that you have been watching him since he walked in. He does not know that your team flagged him 3 hours ago as a player worth protecting, not from the house, from himself. He does not know that the drink he didn't touch was replaced twice, so it always looked fresh. He does not know that the lighting at his table was adjusted at the 1-hour mark, slightly warmer, slightly softer, because your behavioral director flagged his posture as tensing, and warmer light reduces cortisol response in ways that keep a player in a productive emotional state. He thinks he is gambling. He is inside a system you built specifically to contain this moment. The hand is dealt. He wins. He smiles for the first time in 4 hours. Tomorrow night, he'll be back. Somewhere on this floor, right now there is a 24-year-old dealing cards for $14 an hour plus tips. He's good at his job. He is polite and efficient, and his shuffle is clean. He watches the pit boss the way you watched yours 20 years ago. He thinks this is about the cards. He doesn't know it's never been about the cards. The machine opens every night. It takes everyone who walks through the door, and the people who understand the machine, not as a place to play, but as a thing to build. They are the only ones the machine cannot touch. The floor moves, the money flows, the cameras watch everything, and you built all of it.